One question I get all the time is, are the police allowed to question my child, my juvenile minor child, without me present, without the parents present? And unfortunately, the answer oftentimes is yes. If the police arrest a minor or detain a minor for a crime, they have to advise the child of their Miranda rights. But if the child gives up those rights and voluntarily agrees to talk to the police, then the police are allowed to question them and interrogate them. And quite often their statements can be used against them in court.
The interrogation of suspects is critical to any criminal investigation. A suspect might lie or tell the truth. They may be innocent or guilty. Interrogation is a high-stakes game. Too much pressure, and an innocent person might confess to a crime they didn't commit.
Most people like to think that there is no such thing as a false confession, that someone would never confess to the crime they didn't commit. They themselves believe that they never could be forced to confess to something they didn't really do. Yet evidence shows, under the right conditions, people will make false confessions. Under the right conditions, people will make false confessions.
In January 1988, a 12-year-old girl, Stephanie Crowe, was killed in her own bedroom in the middle of the night. Her brother, Michael Crowe, was interrogated by the police. They believed he had killed his sister.
Just start talking.
He was interrogated and eventually admitted to the crime.
It's like I have this overwhelming feeling that I killed her, but...
Okay, let's hear. Let me hear about it.
I don't know why I feel that way.
Let me hear about it.
All I know is for some reason I can tell I killed her.
He was charged with Stephanie Crowe's murder. Problem was, the confession was false.
You said the last time you saw John...
So why would someone risk ruining the rest of their life by confessing to a crime they didn't commit?
Most people have the perception that a police interrogation is a highly intense, very emotional, confrontational type of interview. But in fact, the more productive interview is not of that form. More often than not, an interrogator who's using the accusatory style has already developed a preconception before he comes in the interview room. And what he does is uses that narrow vision and begins to attack his subject.
There has to be an explanation.
I don't know.
The interrogation of Michael Crowe was highly coercive and confrontational.
Just tell us what happened. You keep asking me questions I can't answer. What do you want me to do?
Michael Crowe is 14 years old, and he's recently learned that his sister, who he loves dearly, is dead.
I haven't lied to you.
He's told them repeatedly he didn't do this. They keep accusing him. They've been in this room with him for many hours.
The detective tells Crowe he has a choice of two paths. If he doesn't confess, he'll be punished in an adult prison. If he does confess, he will get help. This is a lie.
There's two paths to travel. There's the path of punishment, or there's the path that says, hey, I'm sorry for what I did.
There's the path toward rehabilitation, if he makes the confession they're looking for that he killed his sister.
Because we need to go down a path where we're going to help you work this problem out.
And his repentance will mean that he's not criminally charged or punished. If he doesn't, then he will go to a hardcore juvenile prison.
This two paths lie is an attempt to force Crowe into confessing to the murder of his sister. Lies used in this highly coercive manner increase the risk of a suspect making a false confession. Another common tactic used in coercive interrogations is a sustained attack on a suspect's memory.
I don't remember what I did. I'm trying to tell you. You say I did it.
He's trying to tell them he has no memory, but they've beaten him down. He's crying. They're accusing him of selective memory.
I don't know.
And they're just coming back at him relentlessly.
I can't remember means I can't remember. I can't remember selectively is a little bit different.
And here they're trying to explain to him how he could have done this in the absence of having any memory, because he keeps saying, I didn't do it. I don't have any memory of this.
I think there's two parts to Michael.
There's a good Michael and there's a bad Michael. And the good Michael would never hurt or kill his sister. The bad Michael did it out of conscious awareness.
You're right, it's unconscious, but if I'm the good Michael right now, then the other is completely submerged. I can't remember.
What's really going on, though, here is that this is nothing short of child abuse. And he's having a breakdown. He's crying. He is psychologically tortured. This is a painful scene to watch. This is an egregious interrogation, absolutely awful interrogation.
The detective's highly coercive methods used during a 10-hour interrogation finally wear Crowe down. He confesses to a crime he didn't commit.
Got a knife. Went to a room. Then I stabbed him.
Fortunately for Michael Crowe, evidence was found that exonerated him for the murder of his sister.
On April 19, 1989, shortly before 9 o'clock in the evening, a 28-year-old investment banker went for a jog here in Central Park. Also in the park at that time, a large group of teenage boys, some of whom were up to no good. A rapist was also lurking in the woods. And when the sun rose the following morning, the lives of that jogger, some of the boys in the park, and many other New Yorkers would never be the same.
I want to believe that through the understanding of how this happened in this case, that it won't happen again.
Yusef Salam was 15 years old when he and dozens of teenagers entered Central Park on the evening of April 19, 1989. Salam didn't know all of the teens in the park that night, but he would soon be bonded to 4 of them for the rest of his life. 15-year-old Antron McCrae, 16-year-old Corey Wise, and 2 14-year-olds, Kevin Richardson and Raymond Santana.
I always ask, well, why did I have to get that? Why did I have to become one of the Central Park 5?
For nearly an hour that night, roving groups of teens assaulted and robbed park goers. Antonio Diaz was beat up and left unconscious on the side of the road. David Lewis was also attacked. And John Laughlin, who was jogging, was knocked to the ground and beaten with a pipe and stick. Police responded to several 911 calls and arrested Raymond Santana, Kevin Richardson, and 3 others who were ultimately charged in the other crimes in the park.
These kids were 14, 15, 16 years old. They were naive about the system. They didn't know to ask for lawyers.
Sarah Burns is the author of the new book, The Central Park 5, a chronicle of a city wilding. Burns once worked as a researcher for civil rights lawyers who represent some of the Central Park 5. She also dedicates her book to the men who went to jail.
This is a really powerful story about these 5 men and what happened to them, and it's a tragic story.
Tragic definitely for Tricia Miley as well. The banker for Solomon Brothers was jogging in the park at around the same time the teens were there. She was viciously attacked, brutally raped, and left for dead. 2 passers-by spotted her in the woods around 1:30 the next morning and immediately ran to get help. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, police interviewed 37 teens who started implicating each other in the rape of Tricia Miley. After the finger-pointing was done, the bombshells.
We charged her, and we got her on the ground. Everybody started hitting her stuff, and she was on the ground. Everybody stomping and everything.
Detectives recorded the confessions of 4 teenagers.
Raymond had an arm, Steve had a leg. He spread it out. And Antoine got on top, took her painkiller.
They said, yo, who will rape her? That's what I do, a rape her. And she was still screaming. I did that. They put something on her mouth, they gagged her so she can't yell or nothing.
When the media got the tapes, the frenzy was explosive.
The media really did a number on them in 1989. The headlines were Wilding and Wolfpack, and it was all a lot of animal references, which is quite racist when you think about it.
The sensational story of a white woman being gang raped by Black and Latino boys in the middle of Manhattan made national headlines. The 5 teens were tried as adults, convicted of rape, as well as other charges like riot, and sent to prison.
We were the scapegoats.
A sad case of justice. Very sad case.
Corey Wise served the longest, 11 years in prison. The other teen served between 6 and 8. And then in 2002, another bombshell.
The motions are granted as to all of the convictions.
My mother always told me that one day that the truth will come out. It took years.
13 years to be exact. While serving a life sentence in Auburn State Prison, convicted rapist and murderer Matias Reyes confessed to the rape of Tricia Miley. Not only did his DNA match, but he gave specific details about the attack that corroborated the gaps in the investigation. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office joined a defense motion to toss the convictions of the Central Park Five, and a judge granted that motion.
Felt very good. Felt very good. It felt very good. Very good. It's better late than never, but it felt very good.
I advise parents, educate your children about being questioned by the police. Instruct them that if they are ever detained, arrested, questioned by the police where they may be the suspect in a crime, don't agree to talk to the cops. Tell the police, look, I want to have an attorney and my parents present before I speak with you.